setting the aircraft down. The image over my left shoulder portrays something that would be apparent in the weather even if it were sub-zero. This is important because the attributes around it, if there was any water, would turn to a particular state of snow or ice. Snow is ice in small crystal form, and the more that you can identify either matrices as a diagonal, it becomes less important what it is compared to what this would be if it were surrounded by any water. That looks like it could be bubbles inside of a lake, and if the lake had bubbles in it. And if the lake had bubbles in it and it was all over you, you would be part of it. So defamation of character needs to get redefined because at a distance, light can be seeming almost like the same if it's using the material between. Different than this metal plate down here, if it's in between the light and me. Angular adjustment between the two frames would have been all over a better film if I was able to spin quicker to exuberate more of a motion blur in between two frames if they're cut in the middle of this trajectory. It's so important to know the difference of between you and a light, like a cop's light is, well, it's your DNA, and so that being projected as a shadow can be something red. And penumbra of my arm. Do you see the umbra? This is hard with the light on it. I'm doing the math and it's working really well because the perforations of this is making it so that the lens can't be looked at the other side. This is just what Steve Jobs said of his cube, is to have like the back end not protrude because we can't see that in 3D space. So if you went to the left and to the right and you only had two planes but you were storing stuff on the left and the right, then you've entered the fourth plane automatically through the first two that you're using. Peter Pan tried escaping his shadow by sewing it onto his feet, sewing the likelihood that it would get away. That was his only option other than not doing anything. When he started rubbing soap on his shoes, it was even more curious. What if the relation of that was no different than the outlet of a cattle prong being stuck onto its skin was equal to making that metal form differently to charge something that would be used as a combustible machinery other than just an engine. I'm surrounded by combustible machinery, all which need one key to work. This just turned into like a Saw movie where a puppet shows up riding down the aisle. That's what like fire could do. Books that would matter if something bad happened. And how many bad things could happen that don't really matter. It's just other people would take it as something like a dangerment, like thrusting outside of a theater just because you were cold and it was a twitch. So the detriment that you can't turn off something when it's in attack mode. If it is an animal, then it is gonna engage in like other things, like dogs have their hair stick up on their neck, like a lion's mane. The difference between particle board is a change of chemical property instead of a physical attribute. For example, barbed wire can be as pokey as hair, but if your hair is prickly enough, it'll resemble a whisker, and then you have an actual feature. This is rocks on a board, and it was be sandpaper if they were good. And you can have a bottle things if it has live active yeast in it. And there's no shortage of that on the side of the road when you're in Wisconsin. I saw a different spinal feature, and it was a sharp edge of a squirrel that got decapitated. This is not edited by them or made or produced. Last time before I left, there wasn't anything that was covering the wind, so my face got abrased and it turned red. Today, however, it's different because I feel my face is like the surface of the following scenario, as there was this one peanut and it got put into a vinegar, salt and vinegar solution. There was this one thing, it was a peanut, it got thrown into a salt and vinegar bag, and it was a big bag, so there was a lot of powder product of the salt, which had vinegar coated on it. And what happened is I threw peanuts in it, and then I took the peanuts out, and so they had a new coating. No pun intended for a computer scientist, but when there is you inside of a mech machine, like in StarCraft, it's called Goliath Online. This is like a metal igloo with legs on it. In Star Wars, it's like a different name, I don't know. But they've got cats and there's like 4 legs. And so that is a different land game. So that's like a giant tank, essentially. In any case, when you're in it, it's like a mech. And the amount of a mech is just like you putting a glove over your body, like Spider-Man's Alien episode when Venom gets wrapped around and he's tangled and stuck in the suit. It's like his tomb. In Dragon and Monster Hunter, it's the same as in Yu-Gi-Oh! When they get moss on the hands with lava on the other hand, just because they're tall enough. That can just be the same as you putting on a glove and then a piece of cotton in your hand. Because some guy told me that I'm his inspiration, and he came up to say that, and at the same time, while trying to look athletic, he broke his arm rotator cuff. So I don't know if he's ever gonna be the same again. I tried explaining to him I broke my collarbone, and so I've got 2 set on top of each other, and I just fucking dipped. And so there's him, and then there's another guy who just has no reason why he has arthritis and is. And this different guy who wanted to return an object that didn't have hooks in it. Right after I explained that $2.22 for a roll of tubing is the same if one is rubber and the other is harder plastic. The difference of a common good and an odd commodity can't be described as the same because they're different in price range. The only difference of the experts who know what make it would know what. There's one thing I have to tip my hat to is any actor, when they say and the camera's rolling, they're in a different perspective, where that's because their entire confidence is on full display. When I walked out of a grocery store after cashing some change and explaining to a former coworker that I had heard some things and I had to double check if he was making something at a price point clear, it was probably because there was a piece of plastic between the Doppler shifting of him and I didn't really remember his voice. But in any case, when leaving, I almost ran into a girl who was working with him as a coworker, and then I almost like ran into her because she came out of a door really quickly, and it was like from a dog grooming area that was part of a grocery store. So she was probably trying to get out of there quickly because it used to be a bank and she's not either. But then when I saw a baby Yoda picture of him inside like a tiny spaceship egg, it's like that's what the corp